haven't got enough time, but today is a shorter daf because Shmuz missed out the sim. Actually, it's not yet 5-2.
I mean, it's Joe. Today
I haven't got enough time, but today is a shorter daf because very, very nice words from the Pirion. So he said that there's a man to Sape was the Pincho ben Pincho is a Shesat ben Mitzrayim. Yodatim Kani Hashem. God says you should tell your son, your grandson, that all the miracles of the Mitzrayim, and you will know that I'm Hashem. Pirion, who are that Pirion? Who are that Pirion? Shlomo Gansfried, who wrote the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch and a couple of other Kesser Sefer and others. It's actually here. No, they have one based song. It says that the grammar is a bit incorrect. It says, man, to Sapi, you should tell your children the miracles I did. How would you finish off the pasuk? V'yodu, they will know that Hashem. What does it say? V'datim, and you will know. So the answer is that the way to be zeichet emunah is by talking to other people about miracles. It's not the reason we do Sipur Tzas Mitzrayim is not because somehow we've got it all, we know all the emunah, and we need to teach it to our children. It's as a method, the greatest method to absorb something yourself is by speaking. Also, somebody tells a Ashkacha Pata story, no? Ben, you got a good Ashkacha Pata story, no? So you got something? Cost $3.95.
It's a good story.
It's a good story. So wait for a good Ashkacha Pata story. I tell you what happened in Sunderland. My son, they only had 1 weekend this whole winter. My son's in Sunderland kibbutz. And so he told the police that there's boys there, etc., etc. They spent the whole Friday and Monday. First I thought it's one of these stories not true. I found out this time. Then the whole of Friday and Monday outside the yeshiva. Nobody came in, nobody came out. What? It was just that week they had the weekend. No, they have 1 weekend every winter where the boys come home. And the week that the police came to check out the yeshiva was the weekend. Anyway, literally, imagine how much resources is being wasted on these kinds of things.
There's another school, I don't know where things are from. During the holidays, they phoned the police 5-6 times. Got the police to come 5-6 times.
You just should come.
Last night, what's the name? Before the matter.
That's what this. It is. I heard the story. It's not much in my head. I know the family very, very well.
Nice whiskey. Can I get started now?
Absolutely. Yeah, Moshe, we need some sort of multi-one.
Yeah, that's it. Let's get going.
Behind the screen.
We're up to Nun Vav Amud Beis, 10 lines from the bottom. One of the things that Anshe Vichoi did, they would give pear for vegetables. Says the Gemara, do the Anshe Vichoi not hold Hodetan Mishnah in pear? Kralomu bepear, they made a general rule with pear. There are 5 rules to pear, meaning 5 categories. In order, when you've got a fruit, you want to know, do I need to take pear or not? So you have to ask yourself 5 questions. If all 5 questions the answer is yes, then you give pear. If even only one of those questions the answer is no, you do not give pear. So these are the 5 questions you have to ask yourself before you give pear. It has to be a food. The Gemara will explain afterwards the exact what each one's coming to exclude. It's guarded. The gedulim in it goes from the ground. It's gathered in one time. And you can keep it for long term. It's 5 things. It has to be a fruit, guarded, grow from the ground, gathered together at one time, and brought into storage. And the more explains. It's a kind of herb which they used to use to produce paint from. Satin, one explanation says white paint, Koit says red paint. So if you've got a plant which they produce paint from, but you can't eat it, Right, what would be nowadays a good example? Beams, which are not for eating, let's say sycamore trees. You don't use it for a thing. Do you have to take pay? No, it's not a food. So that's the first one. V'nishma, it has to be guarded prat lehefka. If you've got something which is hefka, do you take pay from hefka? No, it's hefka. The gedulim in it's practically made of a picture. It's from truffles and what they're called mushrooms. Mushrooms don't grow from the ground; they grow from the air. But the kitosim ke'achas prat le'te'enim, excluding figs. Figs, I once mentioned this. It's there's a beautiful park called Nod Kedumim, costs absolute fortune to go in. It's near Modi'in. I once went there. And what happens is it's got there all the different plants that the Gemara ever talks about. And under every plant, it tells you all the Mamorei Chazal on that plant. Very interesting. Have you ever been there, Nod Kedumim? No? Yes. So I would say fortune is about, it adds up. It's about £5 a person, but still, you take 6-7 people, it adds up. What's Cholaboid out in 1 year? But it's very interesting. So under the fig tree, it brings this Gemara. The fig tree is not likitosa kachas. Does anybody know? Well, who's that pasuk said about? It brings it down under that tree. Go to that song. Is about Yeshua. And what happens is that the figs, it's actually a fact. If you go and watch, if you ever get a fig tree, anybody know a fig tree? They do not ripen the same time. Every day, a different set of figs. So therefore, the only way to get your figs is to go every day and watch it carefully. And every time there's a fig, pluck it off the tree. Otherwise, you'll find on the floor figs all the time. If you ever go past the fig tree, you'll find on the floor figs. Because what happens is nobody goes every day and they fall on the floor because they're ripened. So therefore, do you have to take pear from figs? No. Very good. You don't have to take pear from figs. And the gladness of Yeshua was that he realized this is true regarding Torah. So he never left Moshe Rabbeinu's side because you never know when you'll get to here. That's the idea of Daf Yomi, I suppose. That every day there's another thing to learn. Anyway, so actually there's a taste in Shabbos that says that a lot of trees are like that. In fact, it says there's only 8 trees which are not like that. But Maisa, you don't take pear from figs. Not vegetables. Vegetables go moldy very, very quickly. Buy cucumbers today, by next week they're already not fresh. While apples and oranges they last much longer. So therefore, these are the 5 categories for pear. What are the 5 categories? There has to be a food, not let's say a paint or something. It has to be guarded, not hefka. It has to be that it grows from the ground, not mushrooms. It has to be the kitosa kachas, got it at one time, not figs, and it has to be long-lasting vegetables. So why would the people of Yericho taking pear from vegetables? Didn't they know this Mishnah? Answer: turnips. Rashi tells us that turnips last a very long time. I've never bought. I don't know if I've ever eaten turnips. Maybe I have. Boiled turnips.
Like a carrot,
Like carrots. Okay. They last a very long time. The leaves, which are also edible, do not last a long time. So when you gather turnips, what happens is like this. The turnip will last you a long time, the leaves not. So the question is it chayv and pay or not? The people of Yericho thought, yes, it's machnisa lekiyum. Why? Because at the end of the day, the turnips last a long time. At the end of the day, the leaves, you're not going to keep for a long time. So therefore, it's not machnisa lekiyum. So it was a machlokes from people. No, you go after the turnips, everybody agrees you do have to take pear because it lasts a long time. The question is, the leaves come with it. Do you have to take pear with the leaves? Because in the end of the day, when you gather turnips, on the leaves. The leaves are also edible, I said. The leaves are also edible. But we show that the next Gemara is very easy if you keep track. In the beginning, they would give pear for lefus and kruv. Kruv is cabbage, lefus is turnips. So they used to give pear for turnips and cabbages. Rabbi saying after kluft, also kluft. What's kluft? I've forgotten. What? Leeks. Am I right? No, kruv is cabbage. Kaflot. What's kaflot? It's leek. But Tanya Yedocha, they used to compare the lefus with the flutes. They would give 4 turnips and leeks. Now, I want to see if you can work it out yourself. How many different opinions have we gone through just now? Work it out. Tanakama, we've got two Beis. Each Beis has got two opinions. You'd say there's four. But not really, because you have to count if any of them are the same. How many different opinions do we have? The Tanakama, the first one, says Peah, Lefes, and Kruv. Where he says Aflik Frut, that's all three. The second Beis says Peah, Lefes, for Krut. Lefes, a Kruv, not Kruv. Shouldn't have Aflik Kruv. So how many would you say?
Three.
Why only three? Good. Why only three?
The second Beis, the one the same as the first.
In what way? Because the second Madama, both Beis say all three. So there's, in fact, there's three, Moshe. Very good. There's three. Three. Shimon and Yossi say the same because they all say all three. You're right in the first opinion. There's two different ones, but in the second opinion, it's the same. Says the Gemara Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. Name it Losa Tanoya Hava. Comes out there's three different Tanoim. Says, well, no, Lo Trei Tanoya Hava. There's actually only two. How can it be only two? No, how can it be only two? You're not wrong if you think what the Gemara says not happening. It says it go like this. V'tanakama do Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yossi, v'tanakama do Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon umay af akamais. Meaning like this. The first Beis says you give Peah leklof, the Lefes lekruv, is saying Aflik Frut, is saying that
Is it adding on?
adding on.
Tanakama.
Yes,
Yossi is the Tanakama in the second Beis.
that's right. And Rabbi Shimon is the Tanakama of the first Beis. Very good. So there's two altogether. And let's just say together last year again, we should get clear. Oh, right. So it's even better. No. Let's say it more clearly. Rashi says the Tanakama says Peah the Lefes lekruv, but Beis says Aflik Frut, but not Kruv. Rabbi Yossi says Aflik Frut, but not Kruv. So Rabbi Yossi therefore comes out that you say Frut and Lefes, which is the same as the Tanakama of the second Beis. Rabbi Shimon says Aflik Kruv, but he means Kruv and Lefes, but not Frut. So therefore, he is the Tanakama of the first Beis. But each one says Af, he's adding one but minusing one. So therefore, in fact, the Tanakama of A is the Rabbi Yossi of the other. That's how you have to read it. Okay. Ben Boyen, the name of a person, Nosan Peah Liyerek, he gave Peah to vegetables. Is that good or bad? Why is it bad?
No, could be turning. Could be turning.
It wasn't turning, so as was said so, but good point. Don't have schus. Why was it bad? Why was it bad? Being machmir. Oh, very good. He saw the poor people were gathering the vegetables. Standing by the garden. Throw it off. I'll give you double of that which has been taken to Musamaisis, because it was choishish for the promise of Musamaisis. So I'll give you double of that which has been taken to Musamaisis from. Not because I'm not because I'm selfish, not because I'm kag, or what's the word for it? Because we're stingy. And they say, why do you have to add the second line? If you wouldn't have added this, they would have said that he's never going to give them the second portion, the double. By explaining to them the reasoning why he doesn't want them to take this, they were then confident he would give them double, and therefore they relinquished the first and took the second. Talk about the Gemara brings a brisa which later will come to some connection to our Gemara previously. You must remember, people of Yericho, one of the strange things they did was they would use wood from a tree which was hektish. What was the logic of the people of Yericho? Only makdish the trunk. When you bring a korban, so then we'll see there's different parts of korban. We're going to have 5 prokim of kodshim now. We'll really get into it. It's very geschmack. It's nice to get a new world. So we bring kodshim. What would happen to the skins of a kodshim? Every animal has a skin. What happens to the leather? What do you do with it? Who does it go to?
But they used to gather them all together and then divide them equally.
Wait a second. Why does it go to the Kohen? Why do you know it goes to the Kohen?
Everything goes. All Kochim goes to them.
No, the answer is because by Oilo it says, we learn from there Kochim. By Kochim Kalim, though, goes to the owners. Okay. Otherwise, you're right. By Kochim, all skins of Chatos, Osham, and Oilo go to Kohen. So they used to put them in Pesach Parva. At the end of the day, they would divide them out. Well, you the people who were very strong, the Kohanim that were very rough. I can imagine Tolly coming in and start grabbing them all. So what would happen is it was no good. So what do you do in such a case? Oh, Iskinu. So the idea was that by the time it would come to Friday, there'd be many more Kohanim gathering together, and people would be scared to brazen themselves and take extra. The Asim Kulu Mishmois for Shoklan Ba'adadi they would take together. Rashi gives a tiny bit of a brief overview of Mishmois. Moshe Rabbeinu made 8 Mishmois, came Shmuel and he added 16. There were 24 Mishmois. Each Mishmor got 1 week in the Beis Hamikdash. So 2 weeks a year, once a week. Every half a year they get 1 week. There's 52 weeks in a year, minus the Regalim. There were 48 weeks. Every base Mishmor got 1 week. They would divide the Mishmos into Bate Av, into subdivisions of each family. Each family would get 1 day. Actually, Rashi says so. Rashi here says there were 6, and on Shabbos they would all work together. Rashi in Yoma says there were 7 divisions, and 1 family would get Shabbos. I did divide into 6 and Shabbos worked together also. So what happened was when it would come to the end of the week, when the Mishmor was leaving, so everybody would come together, so there'd be much more people, and then they would divide it out. There's Machlokes showing him how would they divide it out? Would they memorize who got it? Because at the end of the day, every day, let's say one day was 20 oilers, next day 10 oilers, so that family got 20, next family got 10. Only the way to the end of the week to do the distribution, or did they at the end of the week distribute it equally? It's Machlokes in the Rishonim, even exactly how they did it. Oh, we'll see. There were still Kohanim who were very powerful that would take it by force. The owners were makdish at the Shomayim. And here we have a tremendous problem, is how could the owners be makdish at the Shomayim? It doesn't belong to them. So some translate the word Baalim over here means Kohanim. The Kohanim were makdish at the Shomayim, that it won't belong to them, it comes to the Beis Hamikdash. Others explain that before they would even shech the korban, the skin belongs to the owner. And the Kohanim would say to him, when you're makdish the animal, be makdish that the skin should go straight away to Beis Hamikdash, that way we won't get it. That's his 2 explanations how they were makdish at Hashemam. Omu, lo Yomi mu'atim, it didn't take very long. They had so much money from the skins of all these kodshim that they sold the skins, bought golden squares, and they managed to plate over the entire Beis Hamikdash with gold plating. Shein amor al amor. Each plate was an amor by amor, ko'ivi din azava, the thickness of 1 dinner. Olavegam came to Yom Tovim and kapin oisan, they would take them off. Umanich noisal gav mala bar Beis, they put them on the steps in our Beis. That there's no faults, there's no problems. There are 2 explanations. Either that the walls of the Beis Hamikdash are completely perfect, there's no cracks. That's why they took off the gold every Yom Tov to show them, or to show them how Kaddish the Kohanim were, that they were willing to give away all the oivos in order to then plate the Beis Hamikdash with gold. The Shash and others ask, once they plated the Beis Hamikdash with gold, what did they do with the leathers after that? The Shash suggests that people were so impressed. What? Oh. He said that they stopped. That what happened was the Kohanim realized that this is no way to behave, and then they could distribute it fairly because they were so nispoiled from the way. That's what Shash explains, that they used it for such kaddish things that they stopped taking it Israel. Tana, Abba Shol Oimer, Kirish Shikma Hu Be'Yericha. There were sycamore trees in Yericha. Where you bali Zvoyis, no to nation Bizvoya. People who are powerful will take them by force. Om to Bali Mikdash Hashemayim. So really, this is the reason we mention this, because we want to explain why Anshe Yericha took the Kodshim, which was because of the fact that why were the trees in Yericha Kodesh? Because there were mafias who would take the trees by force. So because of that, that's makdish it. Once we mention that vice, we mention the other vice of the Kohanim taking the oilers by force, which had to be makdish. Once we mention the Kohanim taking by force, we're going to talk about general Kohanim Gedolim that there was. Woe to me, be Beis Baisus. These are names of Kohanim Gedolim of the second Beis Hamikdash, where unfortunately many of them are Rishonim. So woe to me from Beis Baisus, Oili Ma'aloson, from their sticks. They would take sticks and they would beat people. Oili Beis Chanin, another family of Kohanim, Oili Melichishoson, they would come and whisper bad advice either to the kings or Lashon Hara amongst themselves. Oili Beis Kasros, Oili Mikulmason, woe to me from their pens. They would write terrible letters to the Roman Emperor to decree bad things at Klal Yisrael. Oili Yishmael ben Piachi, woe to me from Yishmael ben Piachi. Oili Megvoifon, woe to me from his fists. Shem Kanim Gedolim Ubenem Gizbon, the sons were administrators. The Chasanem Amalkalin, the sons-in-law were a different form of administrator. Rashi says Amalkalin, Rashi says in many places. Amalkalin is two words put together. Omar Koil, Amalkalin. It comes up in many places in Shas. Omar Koil. He says and everything happens. So somebody who was a boss was called Amalkalin. Somebody who says and things would happen. But then the servants Chivtinus on Bamaklos would beat the servants with stakes. So over here we see that what happened was that the Kohanim would there were 4 families of Kohanim were very nasty, and we mentioned them because of the story of the leathers, which we mentioned because of the story of the wood, which they were makdish, because the Mishnah tells us the things that Kohen Shlich did back. 4 times that the Azor cried out. Then you know the being 2 explanations: either they could hear the voice, or it was something which was felt. They should cut out Hashem. They were metame the Beis Hamikdash of Hashem. They showed a zilzul in the Beis Hashem. What they did was they would help themselves to their korbanos and take more than they were entitled to. Another cry. He honors himself and he profanes Kodesh Shemayim. He would wrap his hand in cloths, and he would serve the avodah. What's wrong with wrapping his hand in cloths? Chatzitza. Another problem. Interesting. I never thought of that. It's a very good question. Why is that extra baguettes? Maybe because it's not in the same place. It's Ganai. It's Ganai for Hekesh. Rashi says the 2 reasons: Ganai and Chatzitza. You're not allowed to wear extra baguettes. Maybe it's not a baguette because it's only a small cloth. We did have it earlier, but if it's 3, it's boys. If 3, then it could be. Okay. I just mentioned we missed out the top tastes. We'll go to the taste got time. The taste asked the kasha here before we said that pear is no good. Why? Because it ends up then they won't take Tumas Hamaisis. Taste, what do we care? If you give it to pear, it's hefker, and hefker is also part of Tumas Hamaisis. So therefore, anyway, it's being part of Tumas Hamaisis. You've done nothing wrong by giving it to pear. So I should taste the answer because we passed in the hefker has to be hefker across the board. If you only do hefker to certain people, it's not good hefker. And by pear, it's only hefker to anim. It's not hefker to ashir. That's taste says. Okay. Also, Tesa says that Tavia is not proper hefker because you're designating it for a specific purpose. It's not proper hefker. Anyway, but the main reason I want to mention is the second Tesis. Tesis is a very halachic Tesis. It's brought down in even the Mishnah mentions this. And that is like this: that what did we say? What's the problem of wrapping his hands? It's chatzitza. So let's say, for example, you want to pick up your Arba Minim. We say don't pick it up with a chatzitza. The problem is that Rava and Sukkah paskins that you're allowed to hold your Arba Minim with another cloth. Rava says so before. Let's say the kochel Shiur pers gut zu chatzitz pers kosh und chsev lokach kein bin shtel kich v'atz meshukem und tema gabel lulav lo yaminu noch pek lulav goz gabel lo link kedish lulav b'sodo Rava mal kich de davach shmo lekich it's okay. But tzvi the awesome mai boichas alul bal de suda ken sounds like a tongues kigun shkoach lulav b'sodo v'ich b'sodo shasud b'sayr lachzik v'chai gamne lo have a chatzitz. Says Tesis, when the cloth is there to help you hold the Arba Minim, it's not a chatzitza. But when it's in the way, when it's not needed, then it is a chatzitza. And then you see that Tesis goes on that therefore over here it is a chatzitza because we wasn't there to help to grasp the knife better. And it's brought down halacha that many times we've got dinim of chatzitza. If it's necessary, if it's needed, and it enhances the way to hold it. So let's say, for example, it's very hard for you to hold the Arba Minim, and you've got, let's say, for example, something that can help you hold the Arba Minim. So it's not a chatzitza. That's very important halacha. So this says it's only a chatzitza. It's not enhancing the lekicha. If it's helping the lekicha, it's not a chatzitza. Okay. Says the Gemara. I went back to the Gemara by 8 lines from the bottom, beginning of the line. And now the Azor shout out again. Sushom Meshechem Yikonis Shmuel ben Piachi Tamid Shel Pinchas. V'yishamesh b'kuna gedola, and he should serve in kuna gedola because he was a tzaddik. We will see that he wasn't such a tzaddik because his family. We saw already. If you remember 4 lines earlier, we said Oili mi Beis Shmuel ben Piachi, Oili mi Gvoifon. So Asher Askash was a tzaddik, was a Rosha. such as he was a tzaddik, but his family were Rishonim. V'oid tzvocha azor sushim v'sheichim v'konis v'noichim ben narboi talmidoi shopim koi v'imale kvesim v'kotshei shomayim. Why? Omol of Yechid ben Roy shoichel shtoish beis hagolim would eat every day 300 calves. The shitza shtoish beis gabiyan would drink 300 barrels of wine. V'oichel aboim sa'or goizlos would eat 40 sa'or. He'll tell us how much sa'or is. How much is 40 sa'or? About 600 kilo of chickens. B'kinuach soda just for dessert. Omu kol yomov shlich ben arboy l'nitzah nisba mikdash. He made sure there'll never be noise. So what he used to do, he used to invite all the kohanim to come to stay by him. He used to host hundreds of kohanim in order to give them a lot of food for two reasons. In order to look after the poor kohanim and to make sure that there should never be leftovers inside the Beis HaMikdash. Now, there's an interesting Ben Yehuda who goes into it quite a lot. He says, I take his word for it, that Yochanan ben Narboi does not come up anywhere else in Shas. Nowhere else in Shas. Not only that, neither does the name Pinkoi come up anywhere else in Shas. So there's no such thing. Never heard of a person called Pinkoi in Shas. There is a Gemara in Yoma that was a very big Kohen Gadol who was a Kohen Gadol for 80 years, came at Stuki. It's called Yochanan. He says that when Yehuda says this is the same Yochanan, and he says Pinkoi over here really means Pinchas ben Elazar, and that he was a big tzaddik. Once he became a Rasha, so therefore what happened was we changed the name of his Rebbe as not to embarrass his Rebbe, and his father's name as well. We changed it, and that wasn't his real name. His father's name wasn't Narboi. His Rebbe's name was not Pinkoi. We changed his name. Rashi tells in a few places that whenever you have a name of a tzaddik, and he mentions, we know that he's a tzaddik, and mentions who his father, grandfather, etc., or his Rebbe was, we know they were all tzaddikim. If we know somebody of Rasha, then we know that his father, grandfather, if they're quoted together, were all Rashoim. So therefore, we here, we want to change the names, be that it should, like, for example, if you hear about, let's say, Moses Mendelssohn, and you hear about who his Rebbe was, it's a bizarre for him. So therefore, here we change the names. Okay. What happened to Yisachar Ish Kvar Bar Koi? What happened to him? The king and the queen were sitting having a meal. Go to taste nice. That's a that what's the word for it? That sheep is better. What's tastier? Goat or sheep? Who can decide? Can God the Kamasa Kabbalah brings Kabbalah every day. Also you. So the Kohen Gadol came, top of the Zion place. He showed with his hand like he made a dismissive gesture with his hand. If a goat would be nice, Yasik the Talmidah, we should bring as a carbon tomit. And the fact that we don't bring a goat for carbon tomit is a raya that the sheep is tastier. Since he didn't show respect to the kingdom, he cut off his right hand. You have Shoichad, he paid, bribed, the Pascal is smaller, they cut off his left hand. Shama Malka, the king heard the Pascal Yemine is to cut off the right hand. As well. Oh, Yosef, because after they cut off the left, he heard that he had never. Ben Yehuda again, he's got a lot on this Gemara. He says the right hand is the main Aveira because you do always kavod, you always do with the right hand. If you're left-handed, by the way, you can't do avoid in Beis HaMikdash. If you're left-handed, you can train yourself. No, you can still get trumas and everything else, challah and everything else. Not a bum. Okay. Anyway, but he says the left hand was also bad because whenever you put a bandage on your right hand, you use your left hand to put it on. So both hands deserve to be punished. That's what the Ben Yehuda that blesses HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he got punished in this world. In that way, he didn't get to suffer in the next world. And again, Ben Yehuda got very interesting shot. He says he's called Yisachar. The word Yisachar is Yesh Schar. Yisachar is Yesh Schar. He will still have reward in the next world. Kfar comes from the word of koifa, kapor. He got a kapor in this world. And Bar Koi, he says, is a light, right? That it was a light for the world, that they saw what a terrible punishment a person gets by suffering, and in that way, they taught other people to behave themselves. It says, Marashi, Yisochish Kvapoy Letonomas Nisim never learned a Mishnah. There's a Mishnah. The Mishnah says that a person, whoever brings let's say you promised to bring a korban, and you didn't specify which korban, you have to bring the best. So let's say you said, I'll bring a cow. I'll bring one of my cows. You didn't say which, you have to bring your best cow. What happens if you say, I'll bring from sheep, from kvosim or izim, and you didn't say which? The halacha is, you don't have to give sheep or a goat, because they're both equal in value. So there's a mefurish mishnah that they're not, so there's not greater. No, they're not, because if there would be, the Torah would say so. And then more explained, whenever the Torah mentions kvosim, always mentions it first. You might have thought because they are more important. The pasuk says by chatos im keves im eis, and the Torah doesn't say for the Torah doesn't put the Torah puts two separate parshas, one in keves, one in sheep, and one in goat, and the Torah there doesn't say kvosim be'izim. Since the Torah does not say so, it's a raya that the Torah does not mean that one's more important. You can choose whichever one. So there's a pasuk and a mishnah that tells the equal in value. The slikel of Pesach Rishon, if you've got it in your Gemara, that in many, the Yehuda writes this, that the reason it's called Pesachim plural is because there's two parts to come to Pesach. This is the first Pesach, this is the second Pesach. So I'm very grateful to Tali for bringing in Lechaim and biscuits, because this is actually, according to some Rishonim, the end of Pesach Rishon, which we zecher to learn Mekom Shnagu, Adonach Lok Shnagu, Adonach Lok Shnagu, learn it again and again. And this order, next one, it's better and better every time. So over here we have a summary. First, let's have a Lechaim first. And, Shkech, we'll bring it in. And the Mazel Tov, Mwishi,
Mazel.
And Mitzvah Shem, if you get a chance to go through, it's actually very easy, this small print. I know it looks very daunting, but it's just a very quick summary of how to bring a Korban Pesach. The matter is, we'll learn all of it in detail. You go through it. Shkech, Mazel Tov. I can't read to it off. There's no point. What's the point? There's no point to keeping this.
Do you have sherry?
I don't fancy how my stomach's just not expert. I don't know. I feel that since we've always said it, what do you think?
Yes, it's best to biscuit.
What do you think?